if you could get the biodata, the disciple biodata updated sometime when you're ready. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swamiti Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Iti Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Devasesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Desha Tarine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Devasesha Sunyavadi Paschatya Tarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Ora Bhaktivinoda Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadha Shivasari Ora Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, follow. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Bolo. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Follow. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hello. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari, Radha Madhava Kunda Bihari, Gopijana Balaba Girivardhari, Gopijana Baba Girivardhari Yasodanandana Rajajanarandana Yasodanandana Rajajanarandana Yasodanandana Rajajanarandana Yamunatira Vandachari Yamunatira Vandachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Gopijana Ballabha Devadhari Gopijana Ballabha Devadhari Yasodanandana Rajajanarandana Yasodanandana Rajajanarandana Yamunatira Vanachari Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari 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 Jaya Vishnu Pada Paramahamsa Parivrajacharya Ashtotaya Satistesi Bhakti Vedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai Ananta Kota Vaishnav Vrinda Ki Jai Namacharya Shri Haridasa Thakur Ki Jai Prem Se Kaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakunda Radhakunda Giri Govardhan Ki Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki Shri Mayapur Dham Ki Ganga Maya Ki Yamuna Maya Ki Tulasi Deva Ki Bhakti Deva Ki Samaveta Bhakta Vrinda Ki Lord Chaitanya's Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Brihat Madanga Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Shri Shri Gaur Nitai Ki Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prashtaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pacharine Nirvasesha Sunyavari Pastacharya Shatani. Welcome everybody, our dear devotee friends in New Zealand. Many devotees from Wellington and other parts of New Zealand, and devotees from France and Europe and America and anywhere else, a few from Australia. Thank you for joining us today. Many of you it's morning, some of you it's evening, afternoon. Hare Krishna. The beauty of the Hare Krishna movement is universal. Lord Chaitanya has woven a wreath which with his garlanded the entire material world. That wreath is the chanting of the holy names and Krishna Prema. The goal of our life is Krishna Prema, and the means to attain it, and ultimately the goal also, is Nama Sankirtan. When we're all together, just whatever you can say the challenges of the day, there's always challenges in this world. When we're always chanting the holy name of the Lord, we're safe. Prabhupada said Kirtan is the only safe place. Bhaktisiddhanta said, Saraswati Maharaj said, only those who attend the Kirtan of the Lord will be protected from all the various turmoil and annoyance with this world. The only safe place is Kirtan. So this way, the wreath which Lord Chaitanya, the garland with which he garlanded the entire material world, is the Sankirtan movement. It can be seen in different ways, but literally speaking, it is the Lord Chaitanya's Sankirtan movement. The Sankirtan movement is going on all over the world. In this way, the world is garlanded. It's a very beautiful, you could say, comparison with Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mission to see that all over everywhere, every town and village throughout the world, the chanting of the holy names shall be heard and chanted. Wherever we are, whether we're in New York, or whether we're in Gainesville, or whether we're in California, or whether we're in Wellington or in Brisbane, wherever we are around the world according to our relative location, Krishna conscious movement is absolute. It's absolute. Tonight's verse, we're going to read the next verse in the Bhagavatam, which we've been reading on Sundays, is absolute. It's whether we're chanting Hare Krishna in New Zealand or whether we're chanting Hare Krishna in America, it's the same. Same person, same holy name, same effect. The jivas of same quality. In this way, the Sankirtan movement is absolute. It's not a question of religion, gender, race, language, age, gender, nothing. Even species of life. The holy name of Krishna is equal to all. It just depends on how we reciprocate with Krishna. Vanchakalpatarubhyascha kripasindhibhyevacha patitanam pavanebhyo vaishnavebhyo namo namaha. Jai Srila Prabhupada, please have mercy upon us all. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So tonight we're reading Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter 2, text number 11. So please repeat. Vadanti tat tatvavidas tatvang yaj jnanam advayam prameti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate vadanti tat tatvavidas tattvang yajnanam advayam prameti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. This is a famous verse which Prabhupada quotes many times and is worth learning. Again, we'll repeat the verse. Vadanti tat tatvavidas tattvang yajnanam advayam brahmeti paramatmeti bhagavan iti shabdyate. So we read the word for word. Vadanti, they say. You can repeat. Tat, that. Tattvavidaha, the learned souls. Tattvam, the absolute truth. Yat, which. Jnanam, knowledge. Advayam, non-dual. Brahma iti, known as Brahman. Paramatma iti, known as Paramatma. Bhagavan iti, known as Bhagavan. Shabdate, it so sounded. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace, the A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. I see a beautiful picture of Srila Prabhupada on the screen. I think we're in Wellington, is this right? There's a beautiful picture of Prabhupada sitting there on the Vyasasan in the Bhakti Lounge in Wellington. And that picture is a picture of Srila Prabhupada at Bhaktivedanta Manor in London. Very interesting story. In 1973, when Prabhupada came to London, at that time many things happened. One of the things that happened was he installed Radha Gokulananda at Bhaktivedanta Manor. And the opening of the Bhaktivedanta Manor, when we obtained the manor, George Harrison gave us the manor in 73, and everything had to be prepared for the opening of the temple. So in the temple room, we had to, well, I was in the other temple in very place, but the devotees there, they had to make the altar and get everything ready to make the temple room what it is now, more or less. And they had to make a Vyasasan. So in 1973, they made a very unique Vyasasan. And this was, some you don't see many pictures of that, some, but very few. It was something very extraordinary. When Prabhupada came in the room for the opening of the temple, he was surprised to see the Vyasasan. And Prabhupada's first comment was, "Oh, Lord Shiva is coming." Prabhupada said, "Oh, Lord Shiva is coming?" Because the Vyasasan looked like something from Kailash. It's hard to describe it. It's something very ancient looking. Things like this, you know, it was really unusual. It looked like it looked like it was from some of the other universe or something. They didn't keep that very long because when got the idea that Prabhupada wasn't overly impressed. So then they made this Vyasasan, which you see on that painting, on that photograph there. Oh, here it is. Marvelous. Somebody has found it. Amazing. Look at that. I thought this was for Lord Shiva. Thank you. Some devotees very kindly put this on the screen. 73, yeah. Yeah, thank you. Base Kukut Pali. That's, I think it's somewhere in China or somewhere, I don't know. Taiwan, maybe, I don't know. It's in Chinese. I think it is. Well, thank you very much, whoever put that. Who is this for? Yeah, Lord Shiva. See, they put the exact quote there. Fantastic. This is from, please put your name. Devotees were scrambling to turn it into a temple. Exactly. My service was to paint the Vyasasan with gold paint. Please, please put your name there. Giridhar Yal? No, that's not the name, I don't think. Anyway, whoever it is, you're amazing. You're the one painting it in gold. I don't know who that is. Here. No. Anyway, whoever it is, thank you. Is it? No, I don't know.
Maharaj, I've just shared this off the internet.
Oh, you shared it off the internet, I see.
Yes, Maharaj.
It's not the devotee who did it. Okay.
I don't think so.
We don't know who it is. Somebody, whoever it was, they painted it. It's fantastic. Wow. Yeah, that brings back memories. Hare Krishna. Thank you, everybody. Anyway, thank you for reminding us of Srila Prabhupada. Haribol. So we're reading back on the Bhagavatam now. There you are. The marvels of internet. You can get everything. You know, the most all-knowing guru. Somebody asked me that question today. Does Srila Prabhupada know everything? And it's one of those kind of questions where, you know, you can answer it in different ways. But we know that in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, one who knows Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead is to be the knower of everything. So in that sense, we know everything because Krishna is everything. If we think that the spiritual master is some kind of, gigantic computer or something that knows every single detail about everything everywhere, we're in a little bit of a misconception. The meaning is that he's completely surrendered to Krishna, and Krishna being the reservoir of all knowledge and giver of all knowledge, whatever the spiritual master, the pure devotee of the Lord, that is, whatever it is, Krishna gives him whatever it is to say. This is the example. Because he knows somebody who knows everything. Prabhupada gave that example of Henry Ford, how he wasn't very knowledgeable about mechanics, or about motor mechanics at least, but he created the biggest car industry in the world in his time, the Ford Motor Company. And when he was queried, some people were challenging him about his lack of knowledge, but every time he asked a question, he had everyone around him who knew all the answers, and he just called upon them. He said, this way, he was able to do. So if you know Krishna, whatever answer, Krishna will give you the answer. It may not be externally or relatively the answer that people are looking for, but it's the real absolute answer that's needed. Krishna gives knowledge of everything. So today's verse is about absolute truth, about absolute knowledge. We've been hearing a lot about the relative, let's say, results or the knowledge of this relative world. But here's knowledge of real knowledge. Learned transcendentalists who know the absolute truth call this non-dual substance Brahman, Paramatma, or Bhagavan, known by different addresses. And the purport Srila Prabhupada describes that the absolute truth is both subject and object. In other words, you say nothing exists outside of the absolute truth. So even though you say, well, everything's God, it's not completely wrong, but it's not completely true. It depends on how one understands that statement. Therefore, Brahman, spirit, that Brahman means all-pervasive spirit. Everything is spirit by nature. There's uncovered and covered Brahman. We're in the covered Brahman right now. Therefore, Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagavan are qualitatively one and the same in quality, because they're the same spirit, the same eternal substance, whatever way you want to use words to describe it, the same eternal ingredient, whatever. The same substance is realized as impersonal Brahman by the students of the Upanishads, as localized Paramatma by the Hiranyagarbhas or the yogis, and as Bhagavan by the devotees. In other words, Bhagavan, or the personality of God, it is the last word of the absolute truth. When it's here, probably is indirectly referring to the Upanishads, coming to realize the impersonal Brahman, and we see in Isha Upanishad, which is more or less the number one, or the kind of like the final result of the Upanishads, is that we see at the end there that the spiritual aspirant, whoever it is, who's compiled the Isha Upanishad, is appealing to the Lord, please remove your shining effulgence, this impersonal or Brahman, so that I can see your actual form. And the Brahman tends to, just like if we look into the sun, we become blinded. So those who are meditating on the impersonal Brahman are kind of blind to everything else. Their vision is completely, they can't see beyond that. That one has to go beyond just that perspective of the absolute truth. And here Prabhupada said the last word in the absolute truth is Bhagavan. Paramatma is the partial representation of the personality of Godhead, and impersonal Brahman is the glowing effulgence of the personality of Godhead. Just like if we look into the sun's rays, as the sun rays are to the sun God, and if we look in the sun rays, we become blinded, we can't see anything else practically. It's just bright light. Less intelligent students of either of the above schools sometimes argue in favor of their own respective realization. But those who are perfect seers of the absolute truth know well that the above three features of the one absolute truth are different perspective views seen from different angles of vision. As it is explained in the first sloka of the first chapter of the Bhagavatam, the supreme truth is self-sufficient, cognizant, and free from the illusion of relativity. In the relative world, the knower is different from the known. But in the absolute truth, both the knower and the known are one and the same thing. In the relative world, the knower is the living spirit or superior energy, whereas the known is inert matter or inferior energy. Therefore, there is a duality of inferior and superior energy, whereas in the absolute realm, both the knower and the known are of the same superior energy. There are three kinds of energies of the supreme energetic. There is no difference between the energy and the energetic, but there is a difference of quality of energies. The absolute realm and the living entities are of the same superior energy, but the material world is inferior energy. The living being in contact with the inferior energy is illusioned, thinking he belongs to the inferior energy. Therefore, there is a sense of relativity in the material world. In the absolute, there is no set sense of difference between the knower and the known, and therefore everything there is absolute. And end of purport. End of the purport. Thank you, Rasikananda Prabhu. So, and Dais Prabhupada would go on, give the example give very sort of simple example, relatives. We're in the relative world. We're still identifying ourselves with the inferior energy. So we do still experience relativity. And we react in a relative way. Each one of us is different because we have a different relationship. The word relationship and relative are related. We see things differently in this world. Same object is seen different. So it's relative. The object's the same, but we see it differently. So it's a relative conclusion that we come to. And similarly in the relationship with the absolute truth. And until one understands the absolute truth fully, or understand the absolute truth in one sense is not complete, or it's relative to our perspective. So probably someone gives the example for those who are seeing things from their own perspective of a train. And he gives the example when there was maybe the British, whoever, they're building a train line and to a place that no one's ever seen a train before. And the people are wondering what's going on here. And then they're told that very soon a train, and they start to describe what is a train. It's kind of a thing with a big light on the front. It makes a noise and people and this and that. So they built this train line and a station at the other end. And that all the people of the local village were there on the station waiting for the train. But they could see in a far distance on the horizon, they could see the train line going over off the horizon somewhere. And then the train started to come. A big light on front of the train on the horizon coming, and many of the people said, there's the train has come, it's a big light, and they disappeared. They left. And most of the people stayed, a lot of them left. And then the train got closer, and then people said, it's not just a big light, it's got like many like carriages and things, and it makes a noise, and it's got wheels and chimney, and smoke is coming out, and windows and all sorts of things on it. Amazing, what an amazing thing is this train. And then they all left. They could see it has form. It isn't just a big light. And some of them stayed, and eventually the train arrived in the station. And then they were shocked because hundreds and hundreds of people were getting out of the train, and doors were opening, and people were coming out with pet animals and all sorts of things coming out. And they saw the full nature of the train, the personal nature, the real personal nature, relationship with the train. So it's not just a matter of the big light which foretells the arrival of the train. It's not just a matter of the shape of the train, like the super soul. One meditates on the form of Godhead in the form of super soul. He exists in his localized form, but it's knowing a relationship, developing a relationship, realizing we have a relationship with that absolute truth. It's not being the absolute in terms of the impersonal Brahman, and one and different. Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of Achinchya Bheda Bheda Tattva, we're one and different from the Supreme Personality of God. We're one in quality, as Prabhupada mentions here, but in quantity, there's a vast difference, We're tiny, we're infinitesimal, the Lord is infinite, but we have the same quality. So it's understanding our full relationship with the Lord. It's not just that. We do have a relationship with the Lord, and it's not just one of, He is the protector, the guide, the overseer, the super soul, the objects of my meditation, etc., etc., etc. But we have a loving relationship. And just like we have relationships in this world, some of them relationships completely just a matter of, seeing a person on the street, and maybe you have some feelings about their passing by or not. Or you have a relationship with the people you work with, but it's not very intimate. You have a relationship due to your occupation, but then you have your chosen relationships according to, you could say, one's inner emotions, one's inner feelings, and some sentiments, and so on. Married, husband, wife, children, of course, becomes of another category due to physical proximity, etc. But we have very intimate relationships also in all the different rasas, and less intimate. So the most intimate relationships are always the most significant and most important in our lives. So similarly, without that, life is kind of devoid of its essential feature. The essential feature of life in any species of life, no matter what it is interaction, is intimate relationships with others. In the material world, it is actually relative because we're relating on the mental and bodily platform, which are temporary. And of course, it's related to karma, and it's related to many other temporary factors, and it changes all the time. In the spiritual world, where the time factor is not causing the cessation or the destruction of various objects of one's attraction, etc., they're eternal. So that eternal feature is there in everything in the spiritual world. It's just a matter of realizing what's my part in that eternal nature of the Lord, and realizing we do have a personal relationship with the Supreme Personality of God. So those who realize the absolute truth, how do we realize that? We have to associate with the absolute. How does the absolute, and Prabhupada mentions here quite often this point of relative and absolute, how in this world the knower and the known are they're different, they're relative to each other. It's just like we say, here is a cup of water. Well, the cup of water, just saying that, is not the one gets the quenching effect of drinking the water. Or as you could say, there is water, but that doesn't mean water is there in front of us. The understanding of the knowledge that there is water is one thing, but there's a difference between the two items. And then they're relative, or you could say it is 100 miles away, or it is right here, whatever it may be. It's a relative measurement. Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj indicated that which can be measured is called Maya. And so within the realm of Maya, we tend to measure everything. The absolute truth cannot be measured, it's unlimited. It's not controlled by time. It's not controlled by karma, for sure, or somebody's philosophical perspective. The absolute truth is the absolute truth. The absolute truth reveals himself, as Krishna says, in the Bhagavad Gita, Yayatamam prapadyate tam stataiva pajamyaham. As they surrender unto me, I reveal. Sometimes we hear the word reveal, usually reward, but it's also reveals, reveal myself accordingly. So in the material world, the absolute truth. The material world is also part of the absolute truth in a sense. It's just covered over, just covered Brahman. It's also a form of Krishna, just a temporary form, universal form, Rupa. But it is nonetheless a form of the Lord. And so one can learn, one can understand. If we read in the 11th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we see the description of how many of the various perceivable objects of this world are seen as our gurus in relationship with Krishna, in relationship with the absolute truth. We learn how to see things in relationship with the supreme absolute truth. But the most prominent way that we can associate with the absolute truth in this relative world which we're in, is because the Lord has appeared. He appears in this world to establish, as the previous verse or several verses are, Savaipung Sangparo Dhammo, Ito Bhaktir Hokshijated, and the supreme occupation for all living beings is that which, brings pleasure or devotional service to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is the highest religion. Every other religion is relative. It may be useful, it may not be useful, but it's relative. If it helps us to, let's say, rise towards the absolute or progress towards the absolute truth, all very well and good. But the absolute religion, the real religion, the Sanatana, eternal Dharma, is devotional service to the personality of Godhead. So the Lord has appeared in this world, or he's represented as appear in this world to, let's say, they bring this absolute truth into this world, or reveal the absolute truth in this world in the form of devotional service. And it's only by associating with bhakti that bhakti can awaken in our heart. It's not by speculation or by endeavor ourselves, even if there is some sentiment in that regards. It's by the association of bhakti that we can also awaken bhakti in our hearts or develop bhakti. So especially the Lord appears, bhakti being service to the Lord, but the Lord himself appears in this age of Kali, in this form, Kali Kalera Namarupa, Krishna avatar. The Lord appears in Kali Yuga, the avatar, the form of Godhead. In this age is the holy name. Now, in situations like we're in, at this present moment, for instance, people may say, why? Where is God? He says whenever there is, problems, irreligion, this thing, that thing, so many problems are there. Why doesn't Krishna appear now? Appeared in Kurukshetra. When there was trouble there, the earth appealed to him, and he appears and so on. Why isn't he appearing now? Well, answer to that is he is here now. We're just, because we're so blinded by materialism, we can't recognize him. But he is here now in this Namarupa, in the form of a name. So by calling on the name, it's absolute. So this is the point. The absolute has come into this world. There is no difference. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha. There's no difference. Binatvan Namanamino. There is no difference between the name and the named. In the case of Krishna, in the material world, there is a difference between the name and the named. It may address them, it may refer to them, but it isn't them or isn't it, whatever the object of our address is. It's different. But when we utter the name Krishna, again, depending on how much we're surrendering to Krishna, the name is non-different than Krishna. We may or may not realize that. The Lord may not reveal that to us because we're still seeing the name from a relative perspective. We're not surrendering. We're putting some coat between us and the Supreme Lord in the form of our mind or our offenses, our anarthas, our attachments, and so on, clouding, obfuscating the pure sound of the holy name. But the more we let go, because devotional service, realization of the absolute truth is given by Krishna. I give that realization, or I give that understanding by which they can come to me, but the realization of the absolute truth. But there's a process also to follow, which evokes the mercy of Krishna. Otherwise, we're blinded if we're just thinking of God as being the all-phased Brahman, and Krishna may reveal himself in that form to us, may do if we're qualified, which is usually not the case. Or as Paramatma, if we're a very, very developed, advanced yogi meditating on the super soul in the heart, he may reveal that form also. But ultimately, that's still not our eternal constitution. That's not the highest understanding, just a partial understanding of the absolute truth. Just like the sun, Prabhupada gives the example of the sun. Sun rays, it's like the Brahman. The form of the sun is like Paramatma. And the sun god, the sun, is like comparison to be the personality of Godhead. The three comparisons are given in regards to the sun also. So who can relate with us? Vivasvan, we haven't got the qualification. But it's an example which is given. So similarly in relation with God, but Krishna has made it possible to have a personal relationship with him, not just a distant one, not just a knowledgeable one, but a very personal one, which really is the complete fulfillment of the jiva's existence, of the living entity's existence, to have that loving relationship with the Absolute Truth. Otherwise, we're devoid of our completeness. We're not complete. The Absolute is complete. It's just our incompleteness, or our incomplete understanding of the Absolute Truth, which makes the Absolute Truth appear maybe incomplete. But he's actually complete. Om Purnamada Purnamadam Purnat Purnamadachati Purnashami Shishate. The Absolute Truth is complete, and all emanations from him are also complete in themselves. But due to our incompleteness or our incomplete understanding, we see it relatively. We can't understand the absolute nature of Godhead. So we may have some concept of the relative nature of God in the material sense of the universe, cosmic universe, the universal form, or a little further advanced the impersonal Brahman, those who reject the material form. They may come to that platform. It's a great endeavor. It's not easy. Very troublesome path, Krishna says, leading to that level of realization. But within this cosmic or this universe, this Virat, this material form, the Lord appears. And when he appears, Prabhupada gives the example like a king entering into a prison. The king may enter into the prison. He may visit the prison, but he's not a prisoner. We're in there because of our own doing. We're placed there by the king or his representatives. We're placed into the prison, and we're there, and we're stuck there, just like we're stuck in this universe because of our own doing. We're not here by chance. And why shouldn't the king, the Lord, come into this world also? Why not? This is a world also. Prison is also part of the state. Hospital is part of the state. Schools are part of the state. King can go where he likes. You don't have kings now, prime minister, president, whatever it is. They can go pretty much wherever they like. If they want to visit the prison, they can. But does it make them a prisoner? No. They're visiting for different reasons. Maybe I just visit to see if it's being run properly. But the case of Krishna, he visits this world to give us a chance to associate, because it's by association only that our perception can change. It's the perception of how we see things that needs to be changed, not what we see, but how we see it. Even in this world, the Lord teaches us in the Bhagavad Gita, much of the Gita is aimed at how we see the world and seeing Krishna's presence within what we see in this world. So the Lord and his representatives teach us to see the world in relationship to him and not in relationship to each other. That may be there in daily dealings, but in the real sense of the term, we see everything in relationship with Krishna. This is what Bhagavad Gita is teaching us to see, and learning how to engage everything in such a way that the realization of that will be there, not just the theory, but the realization, as Krishna says in the 4th chapter of Bhagavad Gita. Those who dedicate themselves to this knowledge realize this knowledge in due course of time, because from Krishna comes that realization, he gives that knowledge. When we put into practice his words in our daily lives, Krishna then, as he chooses, he can do as he likes. It's not that it has to happen. He has absolute free will. But generally, this is the process of surrendering. When we take Krishna's words as absolute and apply them in our lives in every situation, then the Lord reciprocates by giving us realization. So we're no longer affected or deviated or attracted by the relative form of the Lord in the form of the material world. So particularly in the form of Namarup, in the form of name, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, the Lord appears in this world. And he's there always, but he appears, he reveals himself in this world, in this particular form, very easy, accessible form of Godhead. And by associating with the holy name, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, 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 Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. We're associating then gradually, Bhaktisiddhanta Maharaj said, if we expose ourselves to the sound vibration of the holy name, our consciousness and our perception become purified. We start to see everything in relationship with Krishna. No matter what it is, we can see it. And so this is the realization. This is at least acceptance, surrender, that we accept that as they surrender unto me. Krishna, I reward them accordingly. Just surrender, give up all other forms of shelter, surrender to me. I will relieve you from all sinful reactions, all anarthas, everything, cleans the heart, as we'll be hearing in a few verses down line in this chapter, in fact, how serving those great devotees, serving the Lord Shushushroshtadanasya Vasudeva Gitaruchi, how by serving the great devotees, this great service is done. By such service, the Lord, He cleanses our heart. He gives us, and then we get a real taste for hearing and chanting. I mean, let's look at, say, the Brahman. What taste can you get out by hearing about the Brahman? What excitement is there? It's not really very much, is it? Prabhupada gives example one time, Brahman realization is like, say, for instance, somebody's been standing on our foot for the last 10,000 years. You get used to it after a while. You accept it as the normal state of being, although it's not. But we get so used to it that we accept that's normal. Then suddenly they take their foot off. And it's maybe a bit stunning at first, but there's a great relief. You didn't realize it, that you had someone standing on your foot. And it's a tremendous relief. You feel so relieved. It's like a great feeling. I don't suggest you try it, but it is a great feeling to experience the relief. Mostly in the material world, people are, pleasure in this world is more like relief. We're tired, we have to sleep. We feel relief. We're hungry, we have to eat. We feel relief. We're cold, we need heat. We feel relief. We're hot, we need some cool. We feel relief. Where our senses are burning, we have to satisfy them. We feel relief. It's more or less being relieved from an abnormal situation rather than experiencing a normal one. That's mostly what material work's all about. So Brahman is a bit like that. It's a relief from being under the modes of nature, suffering the threefold miseries, suffering birth and death, and so on. No more anxiety, no more fear. Freedom from that. So that's a kind of a big relief, and a big Brahmanda, the pleasure of Brahman. It's more of a negative experience than the positive one. Freedom from the negative experience of the material world. And even Paramatma, there's no active relationship. Even if we do understand there's a Supreme Lord in every atom, it doesn't awaken our actual relationship. There may be a reverential address there, but it's not our real relationship with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Paramatma form of Godhead only exists in relationship with the material world. The yogis can go in different directions if they do come to that platform of realization. Some of them identify themselves with their object of their vision, and they take to the impersonal path, and some become worshippers of Lord in reverence. But they may attain Vaikuntha, you could say. But the full form of the Lord, the original form, that Ishvara Parama Krishna Satchidananda Vigraha Nadir Adi Govindam Sarvakarna Karna, that original form of the Lord evades them. They're not able to reach that platform. That's through loving devotional service. So Krishna has appeared particularly in this Kali Yuga as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, where he's come specifically to give what no other Rupa Goswami says, Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gaurtishe Namaha. Giving what no other incarnation of God has ever given before. He's giving love of Godhead freely. Even we have no qualification. The qualification is take it. Prabhupada said, my mercy is there. The only qualification is you have to take it. So we have to take it. But do we take it? No. we take what we like and leave what we like. Sometimes we have a relative relationship. Sometimes we're trying to be attentive, sometimes we're not. Sometimes we chant, sometimes we don't. We're relatives. We're still in the world of duality, or consciousness is still affected by duality of identification, because we identify ourselves with the body and mind, with the material world, etc. It takes time. Devotional service is the, you can say, the practical, although it's a little, maybe not quite so easy to see that as the form of the Lord, but it is nonetheless the hand of the Lord, or at least we can see it like that, the hand of the Lord coming into this world. Just hold on to devotional service, and gradually Prabhupada writes in Nectar Devotion, those who are not willing to, or not enthusiastic to make that change, for them devotional service, practical devotional service is essential. And in due course of time, we may develop that desire for change as we perform various devotional activities. It evokes within our heart, by the mercy of the Lord, by the mercy of the pure devotees, an attraction for hearing and chanting about Krishna. The Nam is the first, you could say, the first stage in terms of Bhagavan realization, in terms of developing a relationship with Krishna. His relationship with Nam, from when we're at Nam, our chanting becomes pure. Krishna reveals his form, and reveals his form, relationship, pastimes, and qualities of the Lord one by one, and become manifested or revealed. It starts by taking shelter of the holy name, chanting the Maha Mantra. Everything will be revealed, because Krishna has invested all of his transcendental potencies in the holy name. Nam Namakari Bahoda Nija Sarva Shaktis Tatrapita Nimatak Smarane Nakalaha. The Lord has invested all of his transcendental opulences in the holy name, just in the association of others, especially, of course, this churning, this awakening of this taste, the taste for hearing and chanting awakens. We feel great satisfaction in the heart and in the ear, in the association of devotees we chant. Because the Yuga Dharma, the actual method or the way the Lord has appeared, is through congregational chanting of Nam. Nam is congregational Sankirtan. So we, much as possible, engage in Sankirtan, and in the association of devotees, everything becomes clarified. And the Lord, the absolute truth in full, may reveal himself. Otherwise, we only get a partial understanding. A partial understanding, although it's, you could say, it's something, but it's not complete. It's incomplete. Incomplete. It's like if you say, do you know so-and-so? You say, yes. What do you know? They're a man. That's all you know. Or they're American. That's all you know. Relative. It's not very deep. And someone else may know, oh, I know they're this, they're from here, they're this age, they do this, that's their job, they're so old, they're this, that, they look like this, so on and so forth. And that's a much more mature or developed understanding of who they are, you could say, much more accurate. But it's still not accurate. The person who really knows them, their wife or their intimate associates, they know their nature, they know what pleases them, so many things. They know everything about them, pretty much. So similarly, the pure devotees of the Lord, they know Krishna. Of course, you could say they may not know Krishna from every angle of perspective. They may be in a certain mode, but they're guided by the Lord. And just like Madhav, we're hearing Madhavendra Puri, one of the great acharyas the other day, how he has the seed of the bhakti tree, which Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu at least developed and spread all over the world. He is the seed of that tree. He said he's like a wish-fulfilling tree. From him, one can get the fruits of all relationships with Krishna. This is the nature of the devotee. By serving the devotee, access to all varieties of devotional service is made available because they're connected to Krishna. And the jiva has a particular relationship with Krishna, and serving one of the Lord's representatives, Krishna will reveal everything. This is the result of connecting with the Lord's pure devotee. So this beautiful verse from the Bhagavatam is worth learning and remembering these various aspects of the absolute truth And they're all related. They're all absolute in the sense of their eternal nature. The Brahman is also absolute, but it's not complete in the sense of its understanding of the absolute. It only contains what's known as the sat aspect of the supreme, and knowledge of the super soul, the chit, knowing that there is a God, and we're not the same as God. He's supreme. We're inferior, whatever you want to call it, superior nature, but inferior in terms of quantity, and then the personal relationship with the absolute truth, the Bhagavan relationship. This is full. So devotees do accept the Brahman and the Paramatma aspects, although Prabhupada says here that they may not accept the Bhagavan aspect or other aspect. But those who understand the Bhagavan aspect, they understand everything. They understand the Paramatma, or at least they understand it, accept it at least, and they understand Brahman. They're both acceptable, although they're not desirable for a Vaishnava, because there's no loving reciprocation. There's no relationship with the Lord. In fact, in the Brahman, there's a denial of a relationship. There's a denial of a difference there. I mean, the spiritual world is Lord Chaitanya's philosophy of Achintya Bheda Bheda Tattva, is that the living entity is simultaneously one with yet different than the Supreme Lord. And that applies to all forms of energy. They're one with God, but there's a difference there in terms of their function or in terms of their quantity, etc. Just like in the Brahman, it's all pervasive. You could say it's everywhere, pervasive everywhere, because everything is Brahman, but it lacks many of the qualities of Bhagavan, even the Paramatma. There's no relationship there, it's just eternal existence. Paramatma, there is at least a relative relationship, it's not an intimate one. And in Bhagavan, that also may only be of a temporary nature, depending on what direction, or let's say which consciousness the living entity is in. And some may go one way, some may go the other. But in the Bhagavan platform, that aspect of the Lord is only revealed when devotional service becomes ripened, and the Lord reveals himself as he is, standing before you. Krishna, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna said, this form that you are seeing, Arjuna, cannot be understood by study of the scriptures, by austerity, by renunciation, or whatever it is not to be understood. Why? Because only by devotional service. Bhakti mama vijanati yavanyas-chasmi tadvada. I'm only seen or I only reveal myself or understood by the practice of devotional service, not by any other means. So it's devotional service alone, which is the cause of the Lord. Devotional service manifests bhakti, personified. Of course, Radharani is a personification of pure devotional service. So by the grace of Radharani only, the Lord reveals himself to us in his full form, not just the partial form. Because the partial form doesn't really bring. Just so, if you say, you can give a personal example, if somebody accepts you as just existing, okay, at least they accept you exist. But it's not very pleasing. There's no relationship. There's no taste there. And if someone accepts you in terms of, you don't just exist, but you are a person, and you do have your place, but there's still no intimate relationship there. And if somebody accepts you and wants to serve you and please you, because in Paramatma there's no please, someone's just meditating on you, basically speaking. They're just meditating on us. What does that do for us? You might be starving, or you might be hungry, cold, feeling stressed, whatever it is. Somebody meditating on you is not going to do much good. But, if they actually come and, how can I please you? How can I serve you? What can I do for you? Then that's devotional service. To Krishna, at least in the material world, it's relative, based on material factors. But in relationship with Krishna, it's absolute. So when we have that relationship with that spirit, how can I serve you? How can I please you? Prabhupada said that's the only thing we ever needed to ask his guru, was how can I serve you? So we have that spirit of surrender, that's pleasing to Krishna. That's the relationship. That brings loving interaction. There's not really any loving interaction in meditation. Certainly not in just recognition of existence, that's for sure. So when we actually have this mood, devotional service is to cultivate this mood. How can I serve you? How can I please you, Krishna? This is the mood. Then Krishna, everything is for you. Desham satata yuktanam bhajatam pratipravakam dadami bodhi yogam tam yunamam bhyanti teda. Those who are on this path, those who are serving me with love with all their hearts, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. Krishna gives that understanding. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you all very much. If there are any questions, please feel free to put them on the chat screen. It takes a few minutes. Is someone connected three aspects of Krishna with these three forms, like Brahman? I think what it means is, do we have a connection with all three? Or is it one or the other? Well, if you're in Brahman, if that's your goal, to merge into the Brahmajyoti, then although constitutionally we may have a relationship with Krishna in another way, but you have no awareness of it. If you're meditating on the Paramatma, Super Soul, you may realize that everything is spirit, but you won't realize your relationship with Krishna, an intimate relationship, only in as much as you recognize the localized aspect of the Supreme. And as I said, that it's described that some yogis, when they see that form in their heart, that Paramatma form within their hearts, they identify with it and they want to merge either into the body or into the effulgence of that Paramatma. So that's another form of impersonalism, actually. There's no relationship, it's just existing within it, unaware of a relationship. Others may turn to seeing the Super Soul as being, we could say, the Supreme, and they may take up the mood of reverential worship of the Lord, may Vaikuntha mood, Aishvarya Bhav, but they have no inclination, no awareness of the higher form of intimacy in form of the absolute truth in full and the Bhagavan form of Lord. They have a part, they go further if they start worshipping the Super Soul, like worshipping Narayan or something. But that's the next stage after that, just like recognition of the Super Soul within the heart as the guide, as the object of my meditation, is not active service. It's just a recognition, knowledge. And they may go further beyond that. After many births, they may surrender to the Lord, but usually that's in the form of reverential worship of the great Supreme Personality of Godhead in the form of Narayan. But that's the next stage beyond Paramatma. And those who have a clear or more complete understanding of the Lord in all of his features, Bhagavan, Paramatma, and Brahman, they understand the other two, although they have no inclination to practice or apply it in their lives in such that they recognize the presence or the existence of the other forms of the Absolute for sure. But they're not, it's like we see with the residents of Vrindavan. They have no interest, even when Krishna disappeared, for instance, from the Rasa Leela, the gopis are searching everywhere. So to have a bit of fun, Krishna turned himself into the four-armed Narayan form. And the gopis came running, they saw the four-armed Narayan form sometime on the path and said, "Oh, have you seen Krishna anywhere? Which way did he go?" This way, that way. Yeah. But they weren't interested in that form of Narayan at all. The Supreme Personality of God, "Oh, Narayan, oh, Lord Narayan." And maybe they showed a little respect or something. But they weren't interested. They were just looking for Krishna in his sweet little form of cowherd boy. They were searching for him like that. They weren't interested in that. When the residents of when Krishna took the residents of Vrindavan to Vaikuntha, they were like, "What is this? What's going on?" They weren't at all into it, There's mighty Narayan, Lord Narayan there, and everyone worshipping super opulence. They weren't interested. They weren't interested at all. It's like if you have a very intimate, loving relationship with somebody, say, for instance, your husband or something is, he is head is the chief justice or the, the court, big man, maybe he's the magistrate or, some big post in the court. But are you interested in that if you're the wife? You may be in certain issues. You may be proud your husband's got a big position, but really speaking, when he comes home, you're not. Your main thing is a loving interaction with him. You don't want to talk, maybe sometimes, but not really. The most intimate talks do not include that. They're not really. It's in the spiritual realm when one comes to the Bhagavan, you don't want to talk about Paramatma and Bhagavan and Brahman and all. They're like, what? What's this stuff? You're not interested in it. It's how to increase the sweet loving exchange with Krishna, how to bring more pleasure to Krishna. Although in one sense awareness is there, but it's hidden, it's of no significance for one who's on that platform. It's like even in education, when you're 5 years old, you're studying simple math, arithmetic, maybe not even at that age, but soon you'll be studying simple arithmetic. And then you study more advanced maths, and then you study some advanced trigonometry or something, some advanced form of calculations, etc. And although it's based upon the basic foundation of simple arithmetic, but you're not interested in sitting around talking about 2 and 2 equals 4. But it's contained within you could say your knowledge within your realization is contained there. So everything is Brahman, but you don't think about it as automatically everything's Brahman. You're being one with God, for instance, Prabhupada said, for a devotee, means they have no interest other than pleasing the desire of Krishna. There's no separate interest whatsoever. So they're really one. And God actually is more than merging with God. One becomes the controller of God. Krishna is controlled by loving devotional service. It's more than Brahman, far more than Brahman or Paramatma. Anyway, something. Who's next? Let's say if a yogi, has anyone else got any? Hey, Martin, you're really full of questions, oh boy. Let's say if a yogi already on the path practicing Ashtanga yoga joins Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's movement, is it practical to continue with Ashtanga as well? If it's the original understanding from Patanjali, and it's really attracted by Tribhanga Shama and Krishna. Wow, far out. Well, there's no point in all of these things unless it does attract from a devotional point of view. What's the use of it? If it helps us to become more attracted to Krishna up to a point. But believe me, maybe it'd have a bit of fun sometimes and they imitate yogis or something, but there's no one in the spiritual world sitting around practicing Ashtanga yoga. That's supposed to be a part of the ladder leading to realization, but it's not the realization itself. It's a relative practice. So if relative things of this world, whether it's that or whether it's press-ups or whether it's breathing exercises, going for a run, whatever it is, if it helps us to keep fit so we can practice devotional service or control our mind so we can focus on the holy name of something, a certain degree may be there, but not to the degree that we become more attached to that than we do to devotional service. It's only useful if it helps to increase our love for Krishna. That applies to everything, occupations, talents, relationships, money, you name it, whatever is there, whatever path of life one's on, if that is favorable, as Lord Rupa Goswami especially emphasized, Nibandha Krishna Sambandha Yukta Viraga Uchite, we accept that which is favorable for our devotional service and reject that which is unfavorable. So maybe at a certain stage it can be favorable in the big picture, it's of no significance whatsoever. It's totally meaningless, it has zero value in the bigger picture. Or when one comes to a more advanced stage, for the sake of teaching others on a lesser stage, sometimes the Lord, even Prabhupada, sometimes would teach these lower stages, etc., to help people to progress. So depends what stage you're on, it depends the situation you're in. Prabhupada encouraged Parivrajakacarya Maharaj when he was in Tehran to start yoga lessons, yoga classes for people. After yoga classes, he said this is intelligent use of intelligence in spreading Krishna consciousness, because that's what people could relate to, but then gradually bringing them to devotional service. But it's like when you go fishing, you just have to be careful you don't get caught by the fish. So sometimes for preaching, these things may be employed, maybe, but they're obviously anyone with a peanut brain, any devotee with a peanut brain anyway, should be able to understand that this is not our goal. It's just a means to try to spread Krishna consciousness, that's all. Not attached, but if you become attached to it, then there's a problem. But the devotee is not attached to that. He's just using money and these other things, or knowledge of Hatha Yoga, or knowledge of Ashtanga Yoga, or whatever. May be useful up to a point. In preaching, it may be useful up to a point in our devotional practice to help us to become more focused on Krishna consciousness. Maybe it's some value, but only up to a point. Is relative. It's not absolute. Devotional service is absolute. These other things are only relative. But because people are relative, sometimes we need to, blend the absolute in a way which is, I'd say, digestible to them, just like you put a medicine inside of a sugar cube. The sugar cube is not the medicine. The medicine is the active principle within. But because people won't take the medicine, therefore you put it in a sugar cube so they think it's sweet. So many people are interested in this type of yoga and this and that, so it can be utilized, but it's not necessary. Anyone else have a question, please? Why is it said that the name of Krishna is more merciful than Krishna himself? Is it not the name, qualities, and pastimes of Krishna? Yeah, isn't that a beautiful meditation, a beautiful feature? How the name, even though, who could see the form of Krishna? Where on earth will you see? Even when Krishna personally came, who saw him? And even if they saw him, they didn't recognize him. They saw him as a super soul, if they're a little bit yogi types, or if they're envious, they just saw him as their enemy. If they were heroic, they saw him as a very powerful personality, or they saw him as they're really inimical, or they're scared like camps, they saw him as death personified. Everyone saw him differently, and some didn't even recognize him. It's far out. And, but the holy name is going everywhere. Krishna, the form of the holy name, goes into the lowest places. Some of the places the devotees go chanting Hare Krishna on the radio, everywhere on radio. I'm a bit out of date there, aren't I? Or whatever it is, some kind of social media channels. The holy name's going everywhere. People all over the world are chanting the holy names. And if whatever it is, the holy name is so merciful. Anyone who comes in contact with the holy name gets some degree of, how you could say, absolute benefit. It may take time before it fructifies. It may take years. One letter, a fascinating letter. It can be analyzed in different ways, but there's one letter, one devotee was saying, well, Prabhupada, it states in scriptures that unless one receives the holy name from a bona fide parampara, it will have no effect. And Prabhupada said, but where from have they received the holy name but from us, from Lord Chaitanya? They may have deviated in the meantime, so there's some interference there, but ultimately it's Lord Chaitanya who has brought the holy name into the world. So it's come from Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. And more or less, even today, mostly everyone's hearing the holy name because of Srila Prabhupada or because of ISKCON. Pretty much George Harrison was plugged in there. Millions and billions of people heard from him. And, and others taking it on board as well, in their different yoga groups and their kirtan groups and their thises and their that's. It's a Vedic mantra. Some people chant it as a Vedic mantra, but generally speaking, everybody is receiving it because of Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. It's just there's some, some interference there, some imperfect understanding there, etc., etc. But still, there's something there. And eventually, we hope anyway, eventually it will bear fruit in the right direction. The fruit will become, instead of, rotten, it will become a ripened fruit. We hope. But anyway, we try to cultivate the pure fruit, the ripened fruit. Even those who aren't, somehow or other, they come in contact and it's filtered down. It's just got a bit muddy on the process as well. So in that sense, the holy name's going everywhere. We're going to pubs. You go into, everywhere, the holy name is going everywhere. People chanting Hare Krishna everywhere. or hearing Hare Krishna everywhere. Form of Krishna is nothing to people. Neither they see it hardly ever, nor do they even recognize it, nor do it mean anything to them. Maybe there's some little bit of benefit if they depend on they relate to it, I suppose. Some kind of benefit is there for them. But the holy name is so merciful, it's going everywhere. And easy, accessible, anyone can chant. Anyone can, even if you don't, the holy name of the Lord, you can chant it anywhere. Anywhere, no matter where you are, what mood you're in, what your understanding is, you can still chant. All times. Other aspects of the Lord, maybe sometimes you come in front and you may, if you're a little advanced, you may meditate on them, but they're not accessible normally. The holy name is always accessible, always, all the time. This is the Nama Yuga avatar, holy name. Not the actual Yuga avatar, but it's like that Kali Kalera Namarupa Krishna avatar. This is a form of Krishna in this Kali Yuga, Nam. Please, yes. Gives relief from normal and abnormal life. How we can differentiate normal life and abnormal life. Normal life, abnormal life. Well, it doesn't, when we say normal life, I think most people would refer to what we would say being a situation in this world where there's peace, you're in good health, your occupations are going on, and abnormal life is when there's some interference to that with ill health or somebody invading us or some, restriction on our normal activities, etc. We might call that abnormal. But actually everything in this world is abnormal. It's not normal at all. This word is called the word of asat, which means temporary. For the soul, the nature of the soul is Satchidananda also, although minute in comparison to Krishna. Nonetheless, we have the same quality of Satchidananda. Whereas in this world, it's asat, which means temporary. So that's not normal for the jiva. It's not normal for the jiva because we identify with this material. We experience temporary form, temporary results, temporary everything. That's abnormal for the soul because by nature we're sat. That's why we feel pain, because it's abnormal. Good or bad in terms of relative measure. And it's a chit, it's not full of knowledge. This world is full of ignorance. We don't know what's going on. It's dark. If it wasn't for the sun, it'd be jet black. We're in a relative world. We're not in the absolute world. The absolute world is chit, is full of knowledge. Whereas in this material world is achit, full of ignorance. So that ignorance is the cause of all the problems in one sense. Fear, fighting, anxiety, staying in this world. Everything is because of ignorance in one sense. Ultimately, Krishna's controller. But in terms from our point of view, because we're in ignorance, we get controlled by the modes of nature and we get affected by everything. We have to experience birth, death, disease, and old age, and everything else we see in this world. And fear. And even within the material world, we know that when you don't know something, fear becomes a very, very prominent factor. And what to speak of Ananda, this world is near Ananda. There is no bliss in this world. There's just relative happiness and distress. And as we heard, happiness is more like relief from distress than the substance in itself. Real happiness is Ananda, eternal, ever increasing, ever. It's not in any way affected by time or the dualities of this world. It's based on our eternal nature and our eternal relationship with Krishna. Nothing can interfere with that. It's just varieties of bliss. There's unlimited variety in the relationship with Bhagavan. That you will not find in relationship with Paramatma and Brahman. There's not unlimited variety. There's no variety in Brahman. And in Bhagavan, in Paramatma realization, you could say there's a realization that there's a super soul, object of our meditation, but there's no relationship beyond that. There's no variety in that relationship. And within Bhagavan, realization is unlimited variety. That's the complete, awakening of the nature of the soul, our constitution. Whereas in this material world is a reflection How much pleasure can you get from a reflection, even if it's a nice one? There's nothing there really in truth. It's just a reflection. There's no substance there. It's just a reflection. The material is sometimes said like that. It's a reflection. So what pleasure can you get? And we've already mentioned the method of transformation from seeing the reflection to seeing the reality. That was already discussed. Let's go back to that question. It's very large. Here's from the normal and abnormal. Differentiate normal. So normal life, how can we differentiate? Well, there is no question of whether it's mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance in this world. It's still under the mode of ignorance, in the sense that ignorance will always be there without realization of our relationship with Krishna. So normal life is to act, it's called Krishnendriya, for the pleasure of Krishna senses. Abnormal life is Atmendriya, to act for the pleasure of my senses or our senses, communal or national or cultural or temporary religion, whatever. These are all abnormal situations. They're not our eternal nature. Normal nature, as we said, is Satchidananda. And that, how do we distinguish right now? Well, we ourselves may not be so advanced to distinguish that, but it's defined by Guru Shastras, sadhu, by the Shastras define activities which at least lead to our normal condition of life. It's like if you're sick, when you only know sickness, how do you know the difference? The doctor knows, and he's giving the medicine and the various process whereby we can become healthy. That's the intention anyway. And then when you're healthy, you really know the difference. Otherwise, we just hear about it. We follow the path leading to it, but we may not realize the difference at this point of time. But we know, for one thing, that this situation we're in is abnormal. We don't like it. And even if we don't think it's abnormal, something we don't like, we try to change. So the process of devotional service is the method of changing, best method. Doctor has given us this method, and we can see that the doctor is not living in our abnormal world. He has no attraction for the objects of the senses. Therefore, nivrititashi bhagimanad bhavoshiti chotram anobhimamat kutama shloka gunanavada. One has to, if one wants to change or wants to understand the difference between normal and abnormal, then one has to associate with someone who's Nivrita Trishna, someone who's not, doesn't have this control or this desire to enjoy the material world, the Nivrita Trishna. And what do? We hear from them, and they give the Bhavoshati, the medicine to cure us of this abnormal situation which we're in. Bhavoshati, that's what it means. Bhavoshati chotamanobi ramat. One's heart and mind becomes purified by hearing from them. Medicine they give is they give us instruction, or they give us pure holy name, or they give us Bhagavad Gita, they give us devotional service, etc. Mercy. They give us mercy in the Kutama Shloka, glorifying the personality of Godhead. So normal life is to glorify the personality of Godhead. Abnormal is to glorify this world in its various forms. Okay, looks like it. Maybe someone's, no, I don't think so. Hare Krishna, everybody. Thank you for your time. We'll have a little kirtan and we'll sign off there for tonight. Kirtan. Thank you for joining us all. And we pray that you can go deeper and deeper into your service to the holy name of Krishna. Fall asleep, I think, in the Bhakti Lounge. I can only see Prabhupada there now. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Krishna
Hare Rama,
Rama Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Krishna Krishna Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Go Premanande, Hare Hare Bo. Shri Prabhupada Ki Jai. All glories to all the devotees of the Lord. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Thank you all very much. Hari Bo, Hare Krishna, Jai Prabhupada, Hari Bo. Hari Nam Sankirtan Ki Jai, Hari Bo.